Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to part 3. It's been a long time since part 2 and I do apologize for the delay. Right after I finished painting the bike, I wanted to make use of the spray tint, so I painted another bike, and that project took a lot longer than I thought, but I got it done as well. Here's some images of it. As you guys can see, it was a 75 Sprint. Came out pretty sweet, so can't wait for that project. Now this is the final coat of the clear coat. It came out really nice. There was very limited orange peel on it, so we went ahead and did some wet sanding on it, and it came out pretty sweet. Let's go ahead and get started and put some chrome on the bike. So it's got a really consistent shine to it, and it feels like it's a really hard finish too, like it's really going to hold up. So very excited about it. So we'll do the pinstripe next, and then we'll start polishing the bike to get that same result everywhere. So I made this template to put on the bike right here. So this right here is basically going to be how that pinstripe is going to lay. And if you notice, I'm going to put it so it actually lays on the paint and not in between the two surfaces. I believe it should go, notice how it should go right where the paint starts. So not between the two, but right where the paint starts. So what that'll do is give it a nice even surface to lay on, but also it extends the chrome, so it makes it look nicer. Okay. Now to create the template, I just measured out exactly how I wanted it. Then you want to make sure that you cut a straight line right there, so you can either use a tool like that or make one yourself with one of these. This is just a business card. It's important for it to be even so that when they meet, they lay perfectly. So let's go ahead and trim it out, and it should look just like that. All right, got them both on. And I was able to get the seams on the insides, and I think it's going to work out. So very excited. I went ahead and started taking off some of the tape so we can do some polishing, and that's really starting to look very nice. So that chrome definitely makes a big difference in the way that the rest of the color looks. Look at that tube. But yeah, that's where that big chip was right there. So. But I'm going to steel wool that chrome a little bit, get some of that tape debris off. Alright, so also redid the fork. After doing the rest of the bike, I realized that the fork could use a little bit more polishing, and I went ahead and got it done too, and that came out really good. I used it as steel wool originally, and then I realized that the wet sand was the way to go. So this is the stuff I used. Little wet sand, 1500, and then this heavy duty cleaner. This is like a red clay, and then the white polishing, and the result is this. So I'm really happy with it. So I feel really good about being able to do these bikes now and doing a finish on it that is very much, quality finish. It's going to look good and it's going to last. So it's a lot of work, but you know what, it was well worth it. Okay, so we are ready for the build. I went ahead and pulled out all my bags of parts, so it's all organized. I'm going to take everything out and start going through it. This is the brake levers that I'm going to basically keep, but I'm going to redo it with some parts from this brake set. As you guys remember, the hardware on this thing was pretty rusted, so that'll be good. Handlebar cleaned up nice. There's the tape I'm going to put on it. The quill stem cleaned up nicely as well. There's the fork. I think came out really sweet. So we're putting that on. The world badge and the pedals. I forgot that I had actually cleaned up a lot of this stuff already, so this will help. All the seat hardware. Here's the brakes. I actually had taken this apart waiting for bolts to come in, and they did, so I'll put those together. But I cleaned up the other one. Here's the bottom bracket. I ended up buying the second one because of that right there. That dust cover. This one didn't have one. Derailleurs. I did clean them up before I put them away, so that should go on nicely. And I will go ahead and replace these straps because they don't even match. They're two different brands, so I'll just get a new set of straps. Ended up getting a new set of this quick release levers. The old ones were pretty rusty and weren't really tightening down, so we'll change that. And then this is going to clean up nice. I actually did a little cleaning before I put it away, but it's coming okay. You know, should be able to put this together. And of course all the bolts, the chain, I wanted to actually take that out and let it sit in some chain cleaner. And that's the saddle I'm going to put on it. So this is the Brooks B15 saddle, and according to the guy who sold it to me, this has the white label, and this actually was worn out completely. I actually went through and restored that tag best as I could. It came out pretty good, but it was all white when I got it. But apparently these were the period correct saddles that they put on the some of the bikes in the 70s for Schwinn, so I thought this would be a good one to get, and it's pretty sweet, so we'll put that on it. Alright, well, we'll go ahead and get started and start getting this stuff organized, taking it out, and we'll get the bike rolling. So the paint is off the seat post, and I went ahead and smoothed it out. It was pretty dull, and it had a lot of scratches from going in and out of the seat mast. And what's cool about alloy is that you can actually sand it down with different grades of sandpaper and get all that stuff off of there. So I started out with like a 400 grit and ended up with a 1500, and then polished it, and it came out pretty sweet. And use the rest of the pieces that go up here. So we'll go ahead and put this back on the bike so we can go ahead and put it back on the stand. But yeah, I was really happy with how clean this came out. So that's how that goes together. We'll go ahead and get the saddle. It's over here, and we'll put it on there and see how sure. All right, got the saddle on the seat post. And again, these are kind of tricky to put on because you have to get in there underneath the seat. And the trick is to tighten the first one first, and then it leaves you room to put the second one on. And that's about the angle that you want to put on it so it looks good on the bike. When I actually put it on there, I'll adjust it a little bit, but I kind of looked at it, measured it a little bit, and I think that'll work. So I went ahead and put the saddle on. I'm gonna lower that a little bit once we get it off the bike stand. But that's about the angle I want to see how that runs pretty parallel with the bar. That's how I like it. So that came out pretty nice. Just tighten it a little bit. So I went ahead and put on the brake levers, and this is a brand new set that I found. It's actually vintage. It's been stored away. The thing I noticed about this particular set, it looks like 1973 might have been the last year where they did not have the barrel adjusters like you see up there. This is what the actual lever looks like. So the cable stop goes right there. And I was looking at the Continentals. I have a 74 Continental, and then you guys saw my 74 Sprint, and it has the barrel adjusters. However, the 73 here, you can see doesn't have that. So it looks like 73 was the last year that they didn't include that. I was gonna go with it like that, but I wanted to have the period correct parts on it. So I'm gonna go ahead and, you know, the reason I was changing it was because this thing was all messed up, if you guys remember on the first video. So I took this apart. You can see this one that's bent. And I probably could straighten that, but I'm just gonna put the new ones on it. However, what I am gonna do is gonna be a little bit more work, but it's gonna be worth it. I'm gonna go ahead and use this piece to complete the whole look. So I'll go ahead and use you know, all the other new hardware that you see here. That looks really clean. It's gonna go on awesome. And then I'll just replace the actual casing, and that should make it look very authentic. And I polished this one up, and it came out pretty good. So as you can see, those are all the parts that go there. And there's all the other hardware that I'm gonna replace. You can see this is all pretty. So that one's done. There's the new piece. So that comes out really easy. So that was a lot easier than I thought it was gonna be. especially when you have this hardware on it. So that's pretty cool. But anyway, here's the other one. I took that one off as well. And see those scratches right there? What I'm going to do, I'm going to sand that down with some fine sandpaper and get it down so it's basically gone. Then I'll take some steel wool and polish it out, and you'll see how it looks. Because that's what I did to this one. This one actually had a big scratch on it, and it disappeared. Like right there was a big cut, and I basically got it down so you couldn't even see it. But these are your gold dots right there, and sometimes these get faded or they get scratched up, so you can actually replace those. I bought a few of them for my Stingray in red, the red dot brakes, but they sell them for the gold and for the red, or you could even actually paint them if you wanted to. It's kind of a unique color though, but you could probably get one that's pretty close. But as you can see, all the hardware is pretty rusty on these levers. So I'm basically going to use these for spare parts, including some of these new parts. Keep it all in a baggie and use it as needed. But I'm going to clean this up and then get the hardware on it. So now we're going to have the period correct levers without the adjuster barrel, so I'll feel much better about that. Here's that scratch, it's gone. So I did like a 400 grade sandpaper to basically take the scar out, because it wasn't a scratch, it was a scar that was into the alloy. What's cool about alloy, you can actually sand it down and then use different grades of sandpaper to bring it back to a nice finish. And there it is. So now I'll go ahead and put this hardware on it, and we'll have a complete set with a correct non-adjuster barrel option on it. So got it back on, so that looks better. So I'll go ahead and do the second position levers. This looks pretty straight right there. I went ahead and used some rubber bands just to hold it down. That's about where it's going to end up. Sticks out just a little bit for it to go into that fingertip shifter. And then I'll go ahead and use some tape and then begin the wrap. So here's the tape, and I'm showing you the original one and the new one. And something about the original tape, just has a really like glossier, vibrant look to it. As you can see, the new one right there, they got the same basic texture and everything, but this original one just has it's a deeper orange, and it's very, I don't know if you can see the glossier, and that's what makes them look so good on those bars. And I'm gonna try putting it on and see what happens. I know it's a little bit stiff. It might break while I put it on, but I really rather see the original one back on it, but we'll see. So I went ahead and taped down the cable to make sure she's secure. And I used the medical tape, which is waterproof and definitely a lot stronger. So that should definitely hold up better. And to make sure that the cable was centered and secured back there, because they stick out a little bit when you put them in, I went ahead and put that bracket on it just to make sure that I was getting the right length in there. And once that's done, you can remove it. As you guys probably know, there's a little Allen wrench fitting back here, and it's the biggest size on the tool here from Park Tool, and these will loosen clockwise. I wasn't very tight in there to begin with because I just wanted to put them in there, then they just pull right out, and that's about how much cable it needs to stick out. And these things, as you can see, it's like a little canister that when you tighten it, that little tab tucks in and expands that canister to tighten up against that inner tube there. So we'll go ahead and do the other one as well, and then we'll put the tape on it. So I was able to put the original tape back on, and I was pretty impressed on how it actually held up to, I was doing a lot of stretching because I actually did the wraparound twice instead of how they had it with just a single wrap. So that actually takes up extra tape. I did gain a little tape though by starting at 2 inches versus, it looks like it was closer to 1 inch the way it was. And then it wrapped all the way through, and I was able to wrap this without any splits there. And then this was a little tricky here, getting this little, because you had to put something underneath the cable so it doesn't show like it did before. So that came out pretty good. And then the back was a little challenging because that little piece that sticks out, like right here, that gets in the way of your wrap. But I was able to work around it, and I was able to tuck it in nicely, and should be good to go now. So I'm pretty excited about being able to put the original tape back on. Now, bad news is the other side's got the one that's got the rip on it, so I'm gonna go ahead and tape that and see how it comes out. But yeah, that original tape definitely has a very vibrant orangey look to it, and it gives it a real authentic look too, to have that vintage tape, the real deal on there. So very excited about that. All right, so the bars look pretty good. Original tape went on surprisingly well, and I stretched it pretty hard to get it back on there. And because you got your hands on it as you're pulling it around, you actually end up making it more flexible just with the heat of your hands. Yeah, it came out really good. No more slits, and I dipped it in some bleach, believe it or not, soapy water with a little bit of bleach, and it took out all the grime that was on it, and it actually went on pretty well. So I'm very happy with having the original tape back on it. And I still have that other tape just in case it snaps at some point. That split, I ended up putting it back here, and I just basically cut it and then you just layer it over it. And so like I started again right at the back there. That way it wouldn't have, you know, that snag on it. So, but it came out pretty good. Go ahead and put the brand new bolts on here and make these brakes look as good as new. Here's the original ones. Remember, the chrome had basically peeled right off of there, and that's typical, and sometimes that's what makes these brakes look bad. I already showed you guys how to put this together, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get it done. I went ahead and used some of this Park Tool chain lube on the pivots. There's those little sleeves inside those little red washers. They're just little chrome sleeves that require a little bit of lube just to keep them moving smoothly. Got the rear brake on, came out pretty sweet. That one was in pretty good shape to begin with. Just polished it up a little bit, tricked it out. And looks like it's gonna work fine. Went ahead and installed this. And these things is really what tears up a bike's finish. In fact, this had damaged the original finish quite a bit from people taking it on and off. So the trick is to really, you know, take it out very carefully if you have to. But when you put it on, I use a business card to wrap it around first, and then once I had it secured, I taped it down to be able to pull those two together, and then just tighten it enough where you don't have to provide too much, you know, torque. Because once you come to a point where you can't turn it any longer, that's as tight as you want it. You don't want to keep forcing it, because that's when it starts to get into the finish. And there's the world badge. It's in pretty good shape. Got a couple little scrapes, but overall it's really clean logo. The logo itself is pristine, so that looks nice. So we'll go ahead and brand the bike with its first logo. Head badge is on. That sure looks good. Initially they had this thing pretty tight on this side, which kind of bent the badge a little bit. If you notice, they kind of stick out a little bit. And that color spot on. Here's the fork. And if you notice the fork, I didn't paint that part up there. You can see how the paint is exactly the same as the rest of the bike. So looking good so far. And next thing we're gonna do is put the fork on it. So we'll go ahead and do the loose bearings like I said earlier. We're gonna flip the bike over to put the bearings in the bearing cup on the bottom, and then I'll put these in here. So we went ahead and flipped it over. We'll go ahead and grease up this bearing cup. Races look really good on it. And then we'll go ahead and flip it back over the other side. But yeah, very excited to see this frame looking really clean. That was the goal, making it look good in every angle. So the saddle cleaned up well. This thing was pretty rusty. You might be able to see the images on the screen that I'm putting up right now. That's what it used to look like. So I went ahead and put the bearings in there. If you notice, I left a gap for about 2 bearings in there. So I should leave a gap of 2 to 3 bearings to make sure that they move freely in there. And then I will put another layer of grease on top to lock it down, because I'm going to flip it back over to put the fork inside. And then the same thing over here. Gap of about 2. And that should do it. So we'll go ahead and mount the fork. Alright, the headset's on with the fork. And it's spinning very nice, turning perfectly. Really smooth, all those bearings nice and greased. Functioning perfectly. And the next thing is I want to put the cable hanger there, and then one on the back here as well. But it looks like we're on our way. Yeah, that's definitely my favorite part, is putting on the chrome, all the components, start making the frame look like a bike. And there's the bottom bracket. I went ahead and bought that one over here just to get that dust cover. I was actually looking for a dust cover initially, and they were pretty expensive just for that little plastic cup. So I got this whole thing with a cup for about the price of one of these. So it wasn't a bad deal. And I'm also going to go ahead and go with loose bearings. This came with the cage bearings, and I bought these for it. But then I bought some of these as well. And as you can see, the test I did when I first got it. So this is a new set that I bought for it. However, I wanted the test to see how loose bearings would compare to it. So on this side here, I got the cage bearings. And no grease, just to see how they spin. So you can kind of see. So here it is without grease, cage bearings. You see how that spins freely. Now this is the end that's got the loose bearings. They get no grease. And as you can see, it spins much better. I can tell also just the way it feels. There's less friction. This one right here, the cage, I can tell it restricts it. And I think that's the difference between a very smooth riding bottom bracket. So I'm going to go with no cage on it. It's a lot better without the cage. So I'm going to go with that. And the thing's going to definitely glide really nice. I went ahead and greased up the cut bearings for the bottom bracket. Again, and these are the cage bearings, and there's 9 bearings in a cage. So the rule of thumb is to put 11, and those fit in a line there. And there is a little gap between all of them, so it's going to be perfect. I'm going to put another lighter coat on top just to keep them locked in when I put them into the bottom bracket. Put it in there, and now we can go ahead and once the bottom bracket's in there, I'll put the crankset, and that'll be able to determine exactly where that's going to go in relation to the derailleur, because there's a little piece right here that fits in like this, and then this should be not touching the finish, but it should be about right there. So I'm going to guess that the derailleur is going to end up about there somewhere, but I want to make sure that that is the case once we put the bracket in and put the... Alright, so we put the fixed cup first, and then when you put this in, make sure you put a little bit of grease on the threading. That'll keep any moisture from seeping in, and also keeps it nice and rust free. So again, this goes in counterclockwise. Alright, we'll go ahead and get that tool and tighten her down. Alright, and then using this tool, I went ahead and just gave it some taps until it was pretty tight, and then we'll go ahead and insert the spindle through there. And here's a spindle, and if you notice, it's got a Shimano logo on there. And this side is slightly longer than that side. So this is the drive side. And if you're not sure, in most cases, the logo, if you can read it while you're on top of the bike, that's the drive side right there. We'll go ahead and insert the dust cap in there. And that just fits real snug, so that I'm glad I got that in there now. Okay, just to make sure, I put a little bit of grease on the race there, even though there's plenty of grease on the thing already. And then I also greased the actual shaft part of the spindle just to keep it from getting rusty. And that should come right in there. All right, perfect. And this tightens clockwise, so this one tightens normal. And then once you get to, it'll just automatically stop. It should have a little bit there for the lock ring to go on, but you'll feel it getting to the bearings. All right, so right about there. And one thing is you want to make sure that you keep the grease off the pegs so you clean off any excess. Now we'll go ahead and use this tool here to tighten it up. We're going to go ahead and put the spanner tool in here and tighten it just till it reaches a point. And see that right there feels like it's kind of pushing up against the bearings too much. So I'm going to back it off just a hair. And just like the other crankset, the trick is to make sure it spins freely, but it doesn't have any play. And there's no play, so I'm going to loosen up a little bit more. That feels really good there. And there we go. Now we're rolling. Now we'll go ahead and put this in. There's already a little bit of grease on there. And again, this does go clockwise. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and lock that down. So then you go ahead and use both of these together to counter tighten. And you can tighten this one really good. So let's see here. Perfect. So spinning nicely, no play. And then we'll just wipe this down really good, make sure there's no grease on it at all on both sides. And we're going to start on the drive side. So we'll go ahead and flip the bike over. Have it on there nicely. I haven't put the bolt in there yet. What I'm doing is I'm going to go ahead and put the derailleur on. And I wanted to make sure it went on exactly like it's supposed to be. See how it's sitting there? And this goes right over that little, so when you put it like that, it should just barely hide that. And it gives it just enough clearance. So when it goes over to the second gear, it clears it fine. And the main reason why I did that, I wanted to make sure that this was set up properly. So that gives me a good idea of where that's exactly going to go. I went ahead and put a needle in there to keep this straight. All right, so I took the crank off. I went ahead and got this set up exactly like it's supposed to go. That way you can tighten it without that thing being in the way. So that's where it should go right there. I put this cable in just to see, you know, what the angle would be, and that's exactly where it should go. And that's how the derailleur should be as well. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten these pieces. And that's how this side should look. If you notice a natural curve that lets the cable move freely when you're shifting. All right, let's go ahead and get the crankset on there. Just put a little bit of grease on here just to make sure that they stay rust free and won't get seized in there. So again, there's a washer that goes in there as well. And go ahead and just, and this is feeling pretty good. And again, this tightens clockwise. And just get it as tight as you can. There we go. And put a little bit of grease on the dust cover as well. That also goes in clockwise. And these you don't want to tighten too much. You want to just make them so they're snug, but don't over tighten them. And both of these do go clockwise to tighten. So you just make it tight enough where you know for sure they're secure. So And that's how it spins. No cage bearings. So that's awesome. Go ahead and tighten up the dust cover, and we should be good to go. And that's how that should look. So if you notice the position of the cable guide, as well as the derailleur, that's exactly how it should be. And I always do a lot of comparison. I always go to pictures I see online of these bikes and try to look for the ones that haven't been restored or the ones that you look to be, you know, very original, and try to see the placement, because I always like to make sure that it's exactly as it was designed. But that's exactly where I wanted it, and I think it's going to be perfect. So this thing is definitely humming. So we're ready to go. All right, so we're going to leave it here, guys. I'm going to go ahead and do a part 4. There's a lot of work still to do, and this video is already at a half hour or longer. So I'm going to go ahead and stop right here. Again, the next thing I'm going to do is do the decals, as well as handlebars, all the cabling, and you know, so there's a lot of work to do still, and this video would go on and on. So I'm going to have to stop it right here, and we'll get the other one out a little quicker than this one. I do apologize for the delay. I know the last part 2 was several weeks ago, so that's where we're at right now. We got most of the bike ready to go. The rest should go pretty quick. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you guys in part 4.